There are people who live quietly, yet burn with an invisible fire. A longing not for fame, but remembrance. They move through life collecting moments like fragile glass, terrified that one day they'll shatter into nothing. That no one will remember the sound of their laughter, the softness of their presence, or the warmth they once gave. To be forgotten feels, to them, like dying twice, once in body and again in memory. So they write, create, perform, love, and overextend. Anything to leave a trace. But underneath this striving lies a deeper truth. The ache to be remembered is not vanity. It is the mind's quiet rebellion against the inevitability of disappearance. A human cry saying, "Please let me matter, even when I'm gone." There are fears so subtle they rarely announce themselves. They do not scream, they do not chase, they whisper. The fear of being forgotten is one of them. It hides beneath ordinary moments. When you tell a story and no one listens, when your message is left unread, when your absence goes unnoticed. It is not the fear of death, but something gentler, lonelier. The fear of fading quietly while the world continues spinning without you. People who carry this fear often move through life like ghosts among the living. They speak softly, but hope their words will echo. They love deeply, but fear that love will dissolve once they are gone. Every gesture becomes a plea. Remember me. Don't let me disappear into silence. This fear is not dramatic. It does not belong to poets alone or artists chasing immortality. It lives in the everyday person who tidies their home before guests arrive, who saves photos to prove they existed in a moment, who hesitates to leave a place because they're afraid it won't remember them either. It lives in the child who drew pictures to earn a parent's praise. It lives in the friend who laughs louder than they feel just to be noticed. It lives in the adult who works tirelessly, terrified that their efforts will vanish into the background noise of history. To fear being forgotten is to exist on the fragile edge between invisibility and memory. It is to want to leave fingerprints on time itself, not for ego, but for reassurance that you mattered. Because to be remembered is, in a way, to still be alive somewhere. In someone's thought, someone's story, someone's heart. Yet this fear rarely looks like fear. It disguises itself as ambition, perfectionism, or endless giving. The artist paints relentlessly because stillness feels like erasure. The friend always initiates plans because silence feels like proof of irrelevance. The overthinker replays conversations, wondering if their words left any trace at all. And perhaps the most haunting truth of all, the people who fear being forgotten are often the ones who remember everyone. They remember birthdays others forget, words others dismissed, gestures others overlooked. Their minds are museums of small details, the scent of someone's cologne, the tone of a last goodbye, the texture of a childhood afternoon. They carry these memories carefully, hoping that someone, somewhere, carries theirs in return. But there is a quiet sorrow in realizing how little control we have over remembrance. Time is a thief, gentle but thorough. It erases faces from photographs, softens the sharpness of voices, and dulls the vividness of once burning feelings. And no matter how much we fight it, we cannot force ourselves to be eternal in the minds of others. Still, the fear persists. It shapes behavior like wind-carved stone. Some chase recognition, others retreat into melancholy. Some record every detail of their life, while others vanish intentionally. A test to see if anyone will notice. Both are acts of longing, both born from the same wound, the fear of becoming nothing in someone else's world. Yet beneath this fear lies something profoundly human, the desire for continuity. To be remembered is to belong to a story larger than one's own. It is to know that your existence rippled, that your presence changed something, however small, And perhaps that is the quiet tragedy of this fear. It is not selfish. It is love, turned inward and desperate to survive time. Those who fear being forgotten do not crave applause. They crave witness, not fame, but acknowledgement, not immortality, but connection that outlasts the moment. And so they walk through life trying to write themselves into others, through kindness, through art, through the simple act of being fully present. They do not realize that the more they try to be remembered, the more they already are. Because remembrance is not about legacy, but about impact. Their existence leaves invisible fingerprints on the hearts they touched, on the rooms they filled, on the silence that follows their absence. And that is where the fear begins, in recognizing how easily love can fade and how deeply we long for it not to. Every fear has an origin story. The fear of being forgotten does not appear out of nowhere. It is planted quietly, early, and deep. Most of the time, it begins in childhood, not through cruelty, but through absence. A child does not need to be hurt to feel unseen. Sometimes they just need to be overlooked. When a parent is too tired, too busy, or too preoccupied to look into their eyes, a subtle wound opens. The child learns that attention must be earned, that love is not a given, but a performance. And so begins the lifelong dance of remembrance. Each act, each achievement, each kindness becomes a small offering to the world. Please see me. Please keep me here. In households where emotions are swallowed or dismissed, this fear grows even faster. A quiet child learns that speaking too loudly disturbs the peace. A sensitive child learns that tears make them too much. A bright child learns that mistakes make them invisible. Over time, they internalize a single lesson. Presence must be justified. If they are not useful, impressive, or entertaining, they disappear. And so, they try to become unforgettable. Not because they crave attention, but because invisibility once felt like abandonment. Memory to them becomes love's mirror. When someone remembers their birthday, they feel valued. When someone forgets, they feel erased. Their worth becomes measured not by who they are, but by how deeply others recall them. And yet, the world is full of forgetful hearts. Not everyone forgets out of malice. Sometimes people simply move on. But to the one who fears being forgotten, every act of forgetting feels personal, a confirmation that they were never truly seen to begin with. This is how the wound matures, through repetition. Each time someone forgets to reply, each time their effort goes unnoticed, the old memory whispers again. You don't matter enough to stay in their mind. That whisper becomes a voice, and that voice becomes a truth. By adulthood, it has already become part of their identity. I am the one who fades. But what they often fail to see is that this identity was never their choice. It was a defense, the mind's attempt to prepare for loss before it happens. If you expect to be forgotten, you cannot be disappointed when you are. Psychologists call this conditional visibility, the belief that one's existence must be validated through external recognition. It's why some people become chronic givers. They pour themselves into others, hoping to be remembered through gratitude. It's why some chase status or perfection, not to dominate, but to prove permanence. And it's why others withdraw completely, testing whether anyone will come looking for them. But all of these patterns trace back to the same childhood equation. Visibility equals love. Forgetting equals death. It sounds dramatic, yet in the emotional logic of a child, it is entirely real. When the people meant to remember you don't, the world feels unstable, as if you could vanish without consequence. Many adults who fear being forgotten become the most reliable ones. They never miss a birthday, never fail to check in, never let go of old friends. They remember every detail, every promise, every date. Because in remembering others, they are trying to rewrite their own past. trying to prove that remembrance is possible, that someone can hold another in their mind without letting them fade. They do not realize that their greatest fear has also become their greatest gift. Their sensitivity to absence makes them presence itself, an anchor for others, even when they themselves feel adrift. This is the paradox of their existence. They were once invisible, and now they make others feel seen. They were once forgotten, and now they refuse to forget. But the roots remain, silent, tender, buried beneath the skin. They still ache whenever the world grows quiet. They still check if anyone remembers. Because somewhere inside, the child still asks, if I stop trying, will I disappear again? To understand the fear of being forgotten, we must first understand memory, that fragile architecture of existence that holds the shape of who we are. Memory is not a simple archive of facts. It is the very lens through which identity is sustained. Every recollection says, I was there. Every acknowledgement from another says, you were too. From a neuroscientific view, memory is built on repetition and emotion. What we remember is not always what happened, but what mattered. Moments charged with feeling, joy, pain, awe, love, are the ones our brain preserves most vividly. The amygdala, the brain's emotional gatekeeper, tells the hippocampus, keep this, it's important. That's why heartbreaks linger longer than neutral days, and why being ignored can scar more deeply than being criticized. The fear of being forgotten is, at its core, the fear of emotional erasure. Our brains are wired to equate remembrance with survival. In ancient times, being remembered by the group meant safety. To be forgotten was to be left behind, vulnerable, excluded, prey. So even now, when the threat is no longer physical, our biology still trembles at social invisibility. Psychologists call this the social self-preservation instinct. When people fail to acknowledge us, our brain's pain centers, particularly the anterior cingulate cortex, light up in the same way they do during physical injury. That ache in your chest when you feel forgotten, it is real. Your body records it as a loss. Modern neuroscience also tells us that memory is not static. Each time we recall something, we rewrite it slightly, polishing some details, erasing others. In that sense, memory is not a photograph. It's a painting, repainted every time we look. And yet this constant reconstruction makes the fear of being forgotten even more haunting. Because if memory is fluid, then permanence is an illusion. Even the people we love most will one day forget our tone, our scent, our gestures. The mind, merciful yet cruel, simplifies us to fragments. A few words, an image, a feeling. For those who fear being forgotten, this impermanence feels unbearable. They try to fight biology, to carve themselves into others' neural pathways through intensity, through presence, through unforgettable moments. But the truth is, no one can live forever in another's brain. Memory is a guest house with revolving doors. From a psychological perspective, this fear is closely related to attachment theory. Children who grew up with inconsistent emotional care, sometimes seen, sometimes ignored, often develop anxious attachment patterns. Their nervous systems learned early that connection is unpredictable, that love might vanish without warning. As adults, this translates into hypervigilance, constant monitoring of how they are perceived, remembered, valued. They replay conversations, analyze texts, reread old messages, not out of vanity, but to confirm existence. I mattered to them. I still do. Their brains seek proof of continuity because every relationship becomes a mirror of their earliest one. The first time they were forgotten by someone who was supposed to remember. Yet there is another layer, the existential one. Neuroscientists study memory, but philosophers have long understood its terror. To forget or be forgotten is to lose coherence in the story of being. Humans do not merely want to live, we want to be known as having lived. We want witnesses to our presence, confirmation that we left a mark on the collective narrative. In the words of the philosopher John Locke, memory is that which makes identity continuous. Without it, selfhood unravels. And when others forget us, it feels as if the world itself denies our continuity. So the fear of being forgotten is not irrational. It is biological, psychological, and existential at once. It is the mind's resistance to entropy, a rebellion against the quiet truth that everything, even memory, is transient. And yet, even in this fragility lies beauty, because memory, despite its impermanence, is proof that something was. Every forgotten detail was once vivid. Every faded face once mattered. The mind forgets to survive. The heart remembers to belong. And between the two, the fear of being forgotten quietly endures. There is a strange exhaustion that lives inside those who fear being forgotten. It is the fatigue of always performing, of always needing to exist loudly enough to echo, yet softly enough not to seem desperate. They walk a tightrope between wanting to be remembered and hating themselves for wanting it. Inside them, two selves often wrestle. One says, "Be authentic. You are enough." The other whispers, "Don't fade. Be impressive. Stay in their mind." This battle never truly ends. It only changes costumes as life goes on. In social moments, it looks like overthinking every word spoken, scanning for signs of dismissal. In solitude, it feels like a quiet panic, as though silence itself might erase them. There is a deep paradox here. The more one tries to be remembered, the less natural one becomes. They start performing kindness instead of simply being kind, speaking wisdom instead of just speaking truth. They create an image of themselves meant to endure, yet in doing so, they lose the very spontaneity that once made them memorable. This is the tragedy of the self-conscious soul. They long for genuine connection, but connection requires vulnerability. And vulnerability feels too dangerous when the cost is being forgotten. So they build personas, the reliable friend, the wise listener, the one who always remembers birthdays, roles that make them indispensable, yet also invisible as individuals. They become everyone's comfort, but no one's memory. Psychologists describe this cycle as identity compensation. When the inner self doubts its inherent worth, it compensates by constructing external identities. Perfect, attentive, productive, extraordinary. Each role becomes a safeguard against oblivion. Each achievement says, if they need me, they will remember me. But needing is not the same as seeing, and so even in recognition, the loneliness remains. They might be praised, admired, even loved, yet still feel unreal, like a reflection that exists only when someone else looks. This is the quiet despair of conditional existence. If no one sees me, do I still exist? In intimate relationships, this conflict becomes sharper. They crave closeness, but fear being forgotten once novelty fades. So they overgive, love too intensely, text too often, remember every detail of their partner's world. And when the other doesn't reciprocate with equal intensity, they interpret it as fading, as proof that they are slipping from relevance. The irony is heartbreaking. They want to be remembered for who they are, yet they keep becoming what others need, just to stay visible. Sometimes this fear leads to creative brilliance. Artists, writers, performers, many are driven by the terror of disappearing. They pour themselves into their work, immortalizing fragments of emotion on canvas, film, or page. They understand, consciously or not, that art is memory that can't forget. But for every masterpiece, there are countless quiet lives lived in the shadow of self-doubt. People who never painted, never wrote, yet spent their whole lives ensuring others wouldn't feel forgotten, while secretly wishing someone would do the same for them. So the conflict deepens as age approaches. When youth fades and fewer people call, the fear grows teeth. Those who once held everyone's stories begin to realize how few remember theirs. And yet within that pain, something begins to shift. A dawning awareness that remembrance cannot be controlled. You cannot force people to hold you in their memory. You can only live in such a way that when they do remember, it feels like warmth. And that realization, that thin line between desperation and peace, marks the beginning of transformation. Because what if remembrance is not a mirror others hold for us, but a light we learn to hold for ourselves? The inner conflict does not disappear overnight, but slowly, the exhausted soul begins to ask softer questions. What if I can be forgotten by the world, yet still unforgettable to myself? What if fading from memory isn't erasure, but return, a return to simply being? It is in that question that the tide begins to turn, from clinging to being remembered, to learning the art of presence. Every transformation begins with surrender, not the loud kind, but the quiet acceptance that control has limits. For those who fear being forgotten, the turning point often comes not from victory, but from exhaustion. After years of trying to leave a mark, through achievement, kindness, or sheer presence, they begin to realize something haunting. Nothing they do can guarantee remembrance. No amount of love can make someone stay forever. No accomplishment can preserve admiration indefinitely. No photograph can hold the full essence of a moment. And so one day the striving stops, not because they have given up, but because the pursuit itself begins to feel hollow. They notice that the world forgets everyone eventually, even the famous, even the brilliant, even the beloved. Time does not discriminate. It softens monuments, erases names, and swallows legacies whole. At first, this truth feels devastating, but then strangely, it feels freeing. In the stillness that follows, a different kind of awareness appears, one that doesn't crave permanence, but presence. They start noticing the details that once went unseen. The rhythm of breath, the weight of sunlight on the skin, the sound of someone's laughter in the next room. For the first time, life itself feels like enough. They begin to understand that being remembered is not about duration, but depth. Not how long someone holds you, but how fully you existed when they did. This shift is subtle, almost imperceptible. It's not a grand awakening, but a gentle reorientation. They stop asking, will they remember me? And start wondering, was I truly here while I was alive? This is where peace begins, in the realization that meaning doesn't require memory. A kind word spoken once can ripple through years of silence. A single moment of presence can outlast a lifetime of recognition. And even when the name fades, the energy remains. In gestures passed on, in emotions inherited, in small acts that keep moving unseen. The turning point is not forgetting the fear. It's seeing it for what it is. Love, disguised as longing. The fear of being forgotten is the mind's way of saying, I want my existence to matter. And when you finally understand that you already matter, even if no one remembers, the fear begins to dissolve like mist in morning light. From this place of quiet realization, the world feels softer. You stop performing and start existing. You stop speaking to be heard and start speaking to connect. You stop trying to write yourself into other stories and start living your own. The change is internal, yet visible. People begin to sense your calm, a calm that doesn't demand attention, yet draws it naturally. You become like the sky, vast, unassuming, impossible to forget precisely because you are no longer trying to be remembered. There's a simple beauty in understanding that life's meaning is not measured in remembrance, but in resonance. The echo you leave behind is not in names or monuments, but in the subtle ways your presence shaped another's perception of love, safety, or truth. A teacher once said, "You cannot choose what others remember, but you can choose what they feel when they do." That is the quiet power of a life lived without the obsession of permanence. A life rooted in sincerity, not legacy. And so the person who once feared being forgotten starts to live differently. They still create, still love, still care. But now it's not a plea for remembrance. It's an act of devotion to the present. They no longer need to leave a mark. They are the mark, in every word spoken with honesty, in every silence shared with grace, in every fleeting moment fully inhabited. This is the turning point, when the fear of vanishing becomes the art of being. Healing for those who fear being forgotten does not arrive in a single revelation. It comes slowly, like dawn through fog. There is no grand moment of triumph, no applause, no witness. Just quiet mornings where the ache feels softer and the silence no longer threatens to erase them. The gentle healing begins with acceptance, not of being forgotten, but of impermanence itself. They begin to understand that all things, even love, have seasons, and that the beauty of connection was never meant to last forever. It was meant to be felt. Every encounter, every shared laugh, every moment of tenderness, none were wasted simply because they ended. They were complete in their time. And to remember them now without clinging is to honor them fully. In this healing stage, people start to reorient their sense of value inward. Instead of asking, "Who will remember me?" they begin to ask, "What do I remember with gratitude?" Instead of seeking witnesses to their existence, they become their own witness. They start keeping small promises to themselves, cooking dinner even when no one will see, creating art without an audience, journaling thoughts without needing validation. Each act becomes a way of saying, "I exist, even in solitude." This is how self-presence replaces self-erasure. They learn that the opposite of being forgotten is not fame, but self-recognition. To stand in the quiet of one's own life and whisper, "I am here," and that is enough. Sometimes healing comes disguised as grief. Letting go of the need to be remembered means confronting the grief of invisibility head on. It means mourning the people who never truly saw you. It means acknowledging that your efforts to be unforgettable were, in part, survival instincts, and survival is nothing to be ashamed of. They begin to forgive themselves for overgiving, overthinking, overperforming. Each of those behaviors was a language of longing, a child's way of saying, "Please don't forget I'm here." Healing is learning to translate that language into something gentler, into self-compassion. In this phase, solitude transforms from punishment into sanctuary. They no longer fear being alone because they no longer equate aloneness with erasure. Silence becomes an ally. It no longer mocks them, it listens. The once haunting question, "Will I be remembered?" slowly fades into another. What will I remember about this life while I still have it? There is peace in that shift, because when you begin to see life as a collection of lived moments instead of a legacy to be preserved, you stop fearing its impermanence. You begin to live lightly, not to be remembered, but to be awake. Healing also involves seeing memory itself differently. They come to realize that even if others forget, nothing truly vanishes. Every action, every kindness, every word leaves an imprint, not always in minds, but in the quiet continuity of existence. The person you comforted may forget your name, but not the warmth you gave. The friend you encouraged may forget your exact words, but not the strength they found because of you. What we offer does not disappear. It transforms, disperses, lives on invisibly. This understanding becomes balm to the soul. And so they begin to live with a different rhythm, slower, kinder, more rooted. They find contentment in fleeting beauty, a sunset that no one photographs, a conversation no one records, a kindness no one acknowledges. Because the healing truth is this: the fear of being forgotten loses its power when life itself becomes enough. When presence replaces legacy. When being alive right now is the only remembrance that matters. They no longer live to be remembered. They live to remember the miracle of being here at all. In the end, everything quiets. The noise of striving, the weight of expectation, the hunger to be seen, all of it settles into something still and luminous. This is the final truth of those who once feared being forgotten. Nothing you give to the world ever truly disappears. It only changes form. A smile you shared 10 years ago may still live in someone's kindness today. A word of comfort whispered to a friend may still echo in the way they speak to others. Even your silences, the moments when you said nothing but listened, may have planted seeds that bloomed in unseen gardens. What remains is not your name, not your image, but the emotional residue of your existence, the invisible architecture of all the love you've given. Memory is not a vault, it is a current. It carries pieces of us forward through other lives. Someone you will never meet may be shaped by your actions because you touch the person who touched them. And though no one will trace the chain back to you, you are still there, folded quietly into the lineage of kindness. This realization softens the heart. It changes how we measure legacy. It is no longer about being remembered in the minds of others, but living in the unseen continuity of good. You begin to understand that forgetting is not the enemy. Forgetting is simply the world making space for new stories. It is not erasure, but renewal. Just as autumn must let its leaves fall, so too must we let go of being remembered. Only then can new lives, new memories, new voices grow. In this awareness, the person who once clung to remembrance learns to breathe differently. They become lighter, freer, not because they stopped caring, but because they started trusting. Trusting that what is true about them will remain, even if no one recalls their name. They start living as if every moment matters for itself, not for its endurance. The small gestures, eye contact, gratitude, stillness become sacred. Time becomes less an enemy, more a companion. They begin to see how everything they've ever been has already contributed to the invisible harmony of the world. Every thought, every kindness, every act of courage continues outward like concentric ripples on water, quiet, infinite, and unstoppable. When they look back now, the old fear feels almost tender. They can see the younger self, the one who fought so hard to be remembered, and they no longer judge them. They simply whisper, "You wanted to be loved. That was never wrong." And in that forgiveness, they finally rest. Because the truth is, we are all temporary. Every person you know will one day become a story, and every story will eventually dissolve into silence. But somewhere in that silence, something of us endures. Not in memory, but in resonance. The echo that remains is not who we were, but what we caused in others. A feeling, a shift, a trace of gentleness that alters how they move through the world. And that is more permanent than any monument. So if you are one of those who fears being forgotten, breathe. You are already unforgettable in the ways that matter most. Your presence has altered realities you'll never see. You have been part of countless unseen miracles. You are not a fading name in someone's story. You are the breath that made the story possible. And when you are gone, life will carry you forward, through the warmth in someone's laughter, through the peace in someone's silence, through the courage in someone's choice to stay. Nothing is truly lost. We do not vanish. We transform into echoes that keep the world alive.